This is day 3 of pre-algebra summer prep class, and it's going to be somewhat of a brief lesson today because we're going to cover some things that you have covered in the past, and hopefully through some practice and some remembering you can accomplish these things again. That will help us move into what we're doing next. But first of all, we want to talk about things such as one-step equations, where we are solving for a variable. And so something as simple as x plus 3 is equal to 9. Most of us can just look at that and say, well, the x is obviously equal to 6. But we do have a process for which we go through and we solve them. Since we're doing algebra, we are basically undoing a problem. And so if it looks like it's an addition problem, we would undo that by subtracting. We also know that we are going to take 3 away from here in order to isolate the variable. Very, very important. Our goal is to isolate the variable, to get it all by itself so that it is on one side of the equal sign and everything else is on the other side of the equal sign. And these are called linear equations. They have one variable that we're solving for, one unknown. And in this case, that if I take those 0 out and I'm left with x, over here I have 9 minus 3, which is equal to 6, and we have our answer. We, of course, should take that and plug it back in. Always check our answers, and we end up with something like that, and we say, yes, that's true. 6 plus 3 does equal 9. And we call that a one-step equation. And solving those has become pretty simple to most of us. We've done them over and over again in the past year or two. Then we ended up moving into something such as this, where we would have 4x, let's say minus 3 equals 9. And now we have two operations, or two-step equations. And what we have here is we have a multiplication. 4x is the same as saying 4 times x. And we have a subtraction, which is minus 3, and all of that equals 9. Now we still have the same purpose in mind, and that is to isolate the variable. And so our goal is to isolate this x, get it all by itself. But right now, if you look on this side of the equal sign, it's got a couple things with it. It's got a minus 3, as well as it's got a multiplied by 4. When we did order of operations in all of your previous years, we would do parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. Well, when we're doing algebra, we're really undoing a problem. So guess what? We're going to solve these by undoing or going backwards. So if we have a multiplication, we know that we're going to have to use division. If we have a subtraction, we know we're going to have to use addition. But instead of going division and then addition, we're going to go addition and then division. So we're going to add 3 to both sides first. And again, reminder, whatever I do to this side of the equal sign, I must do the same exact thing to that side because they're called equations. And equations comes from the root word equal. In other words, that's why it has an equal sign in it. If I take 3 and add it over here, let's say I'm a balance scale, and I take 3 and I add it over here, that means this is going to be way down and this will now go up. They're no longer equal. We call those inequalities. But if I put a 3 over here and then I put a 3 over here, boom, now we're equal again, and we have an equation. Okay? And so we got to keep it an equation. So whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other. So if I do that, negative 3 and a positive 3 will cancel out, and I'm left with 4x. 9 plus 3 is 12. And so now we're into our second step. Our second step is we have a multiplication problem. In order to solve a multiplication problem, we're going to divide. And whatever I do to this side, I must do to that side. So 4 divided by 4 is really just 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And so I end up with x is equal to 3. And of course, I want to plug that back into my equation. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 3, and that does equal 9. So we're good. Now, with that, because we are heading into pre-algebra, we need to be comfortable with things such as negative numbers or integers and fractions as well. So what if instead we ended up with something like 6x plus 1/3 is now equal to 32 over 15. Do I do it any different? No, it's just going to take a little bit more work because it's a fraction. So I'm going to it's a multiplication and addition, so I'm going to still divide and subtract. I'm going to subtract first my 1/3 from both sides. Well, obviously I know that when I'm subtracting fractions, I must have a common denominator. And a common denominator in this case is going to be 15. So this bottom becomes 15, the top then would become 5, and we still have 32 over 15. And it's a positive 32 minus a 5, so that's going to give me 27 over 15 is equal to 6x, because those obviously will cancel out. Then I have to divide, so I'm going to divide by 6 on this side. I'm going to divide by 6 over here, which is the same as dividing by 6 over 1. Or if we know when we're dividing fractions, we are really multiplying by its reciprocal. And so 27 over 15 is times 1 over 6. We can cross cancel. We know that there are 9 3s in 2. 9 and 15 can simplify by 3 as well. We know that that is 3. We know that that is 5. And we end up with 3 times 1, which is 3. So we have x is equal to 3. 5 times 2 is 10. We have our answer. And just for sake of time, we could plug that back in. We would know that we would find out that we are correct on that one as well. So, just because we add in a fraction or because we deal with negative numbers does not change how we solve it. We're still going to solve it the same way. We just have to know how to work with fractions, and we need to know how to work with negative numbers. Now, there is something else that you can do which can be helpful, and that is what we call clearing the fraction. Don't know if you've all heard of clearing the fraction before, but it is something we can do to get rid of the fractions in the problem. So let's take a problem like this. We have negative 8/9 minus 2x, and that is equal to x minus 116 over 9. Now, I don't know about you, but looking at 116 over 9 doesn't really excite me, because now I've got to really do some work with my fractions. But what I can do is I can find a common denominator. Well, in our case, both the 9s are in common already, so we don't have to find a common denominator. We have it in front of us. And what I can do is I can multiply my entire equation by that common denominator, or in this case, be 9 over 1. So if I was to multiply 9 over 1 times negative 8/9, I can imagine that I'm going to cross cancel the 9s, and I'm left with negative 8 over 1, which is just negative 8. Another way to think of that is to multiply 9 times negative 8, which is negative 72, divide it by 9, and that would give me negative 8 as well. Then I come over here, 9 times the negative 2x would give me minus 18x. 9 times x is 9x. And then a 9 times a negative 116 over 9, again, I'm going to cross cancel. And I've got basically 1 times 116, which is 116. Now that's a little bit easier to work with, and for some of you may choose this to be your mode or method of working with fractions in linear equations. So in this case, I'm going to add 18x to both sides, and I'm going to add 116 to both sides. A negative 116 and a positive 116 cancel. A negative 18x and a positive 18x cancel. So now I'm left with adding negative 8 and a positive 116, which gives me the answer 108. Over here I have a 9x and I have an 18x, which gives me a total of 27x. And now I'm down to one-step equation. 27 times something gives me 108, so I'm going to divide by 27. I'm going to divide by 27. 27 divided by 27 is just 1, or 1x. And lo and behold, 108 divided by 27 gives us a nice even number of 4. So out of that whole fraction, we ended up with a whole number of 4. And of course, if I wanted to plug it back in, I could work through this again, and we would end up knowing that we are correct at x is equal to 4. Okay? So linear equations, they're going to come a little bit different, a little bit more challenging than what you've had in the past, and that's okay. What we're going to do is continue to work through these. We'll continue on not only this week in some of the work that I'm going to be sending with you, but we're also going to continue on next week when we come in, because I think this is something very important that we get comfortable with. Most people understand how to solve the equations, one-step and two-step equations. People tend to struggle when it gets into the fractions and the negative numbers. So we want to work on those over and over again so that those become really, really comfortable and we become very, very confident with those. Hope that helps to get you started. I will attach as well a little bit of work that you can practice on, and we will continue on with this next week. So thank you.